Welcome to Avos Strength Insights. This is Evelyn.
I'm Chlarence.
This is episode 4. We're going to discuss all about kind of detraining, essentially. What happens when you stop training and how you can get it back.
So in terms of losing strength, and we're going to talk about like strength and hypertrophy for this little section, you typically start to notice strength loss within like 2 to 3 weeks, kind of with detraining. Yep. And then even more, like obviously the longer you're not training for, the more you'll start to notice it. So like the loss you notice at 2 weeks or 2 to 3 weeks versus like 4 to 6 weeks or whatever, is way more. Mm-hmm. And in terms of muscle atrophy, so like muscle size, that is, so for the first like 1 to 2 weeks, you're mainly losing like water weight that's just stored in your muscles because you're like working out, and working out kind of just causes that to happen. So that's the first 1 to 2 weeks. So at that point, you'll probably notice like you'll be like a little smaller in the mirror, but you're like once you start training again, you're like drinking water, your muscles will take up all that water, then you'll pump back up basically. But after more like 3 to 4 weeks, that's when your muscle size actually decreasing at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we'll add to that also, like Clarence said, in those kind of beginning weeks of that 2 to 3 weeks, you're also losing essentially some of that neural adaptation as well. And that's where you'll actually see some of that strength decline in the weight room. You won't be able to press or squat as much as you would before. Another really important note is that you also lose those kind of fast twitch fiber muscles quicker. So that's really important to keep in mind, especially if you're somebody that's in an explosive style sport. You want to be doing kind of not necessarily more, but understand that you will lose some of those more quick explosive movements faster as well than the slower fiber types too. Mm-hmm. So that's really important to consider when training. But again, based on that window, like it's really interesting because so many times people are like, oh my gosh, like should I stop training when I go on vacation or whatnot? And it's like, if you're only going for a week vacation, like take a break.
Yeah, you probably need a deload anyways.
Right?
Like,
yeah, a lot of times like people just like, you don't want to go like too hard all the time. Having that break will usually actually benefit you more when you come back on vacation. So like, sure, you can train on your vacation, but it's also totally fine to just relax, right?
Like I went to the Philippines for 2 weeks. I didn't do any training.
Yeah,
that's it.
Exactly. And how did you feel when you came back?
Like working out was hard.
Yeah.
It's not like I was like a completely different person in terms of like my muscles or strength or whatever. Like
100%. Yeah. No, exactly. So yeah, keep that in mind. If you go on vacation, yes, you're allowed to go on vacation and you don't just have to, continue training X number of times a week. Like enjoy yourself, right? Yeah. The other piece with that is obviously trained individuals will lose that strength slower as well, just due to that kind of neural efficiency and muscle memory too. Mm-hmm. How long to regain that strength back?
So regaining strength, the nice thing is it's a lot faster to regain strength than it is to build your strength. So like, for example, when I was away for 2 weeks, it's not like I was back to like just benching the bar or something. Like maybe my weights were like 10 or 20 pounds less or something like that. But like after like 2 to 3 weeks of like following my program again, it like came back. And then, also like the more experienced you are, the quicker you're going to regain that strength. And with that's for strength. And then in terms of hypertrophy, that'll actually come back even faster. And I think you can expand a bit more on that.
Yeah, so building into that a little bit. So I love talking about like the nervous system and all that. But again, looking at kind of the neural adaptation. So somebody that's more highly trained has the ability to recruit more motor units. So what that means essentially is that when the brain sends the signal to like your quads, for example, somebody like Clarence and I, who are more highly trained, for example, we can fire like 6 or 10 motor units, so more of those muscle fibers. But somebody that's less trained, that's doing the same movement, might only fire like 2 or 3. So the first reason being, that's why a lot of times people who are more trained only need to train like, once or twice a week, like really heavy in order to maintain. But same thing with building it back. Because somebody that's more highly trained can recruit more of those motor units, they will also regain that strength back again as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to like build on that point, because you talked about it a little bit in terms of like how more trained individuals really like have to do barely anything to maintain their strength. If you could like build on that and what you think.
Yeah, so I don't know, I'm brain farting now. But
I can say what I know as well.
Yeah, say what you're know.
So like if you're like pretty well trained, like for example like us, you really only need like 2 to 3 sets or like low-key like 1 to 2 sets a week if you're really minimizing it, and just like do big compound lifts, like, you know, heavy squats, heavy deadlifts, heavy bench, whatever, and then just like take that set to failure, and like you're kind of good for the week.
Yeah, but I would say, and that's the difference though between people that are more highly trained though, right? Is the fact that somebody that's less trained for the most part, and I think we've discussed this before, is that they don't really know where that upper limit is of intensity to be able to train that hard or that intense, if that makes sense. So somebody who's more trained understands that when we say an RPE, so a rate of perceived exertion of like 8 or 9, they can hit 8 or 9.
And like a true 8 or 9.
And a true 8 or 9, exactly. Where somebody that's less trained isn't able to hit that essentially. So keeping that in mind is really important. So like Clarence was saying, you know, you want to be training, obviously, high intensity, full body, compound lifts, multi-joint training in order to maintain it. Yeah. Let's move on to cardio training.
Fine.
Yes.
Our favorites.
Yeah, loosely. Loosely. So for the most part, cardiovascular training, you actually lose that quicker than you do your strength training. So anywhere from a week to 2 weeks, so 7 to 14 days of inactivity. The first thing that happens is that your stroke volume and obviously plasma volume decrease. That's because your heart pumps less blood per a beat. So first point there, right, is that you want to be training and maintaining your cardiovascular. Don't do what I did, where I basically stopped training cardio after I retired from my sport. Not a great call. It takes.
But you're getting it back.
I'm getting it back. Yes, it's like anything. It takes time. So in terms of some of the research, VO2 max can decline for more trained individuals about 10% in 2 to 4 weeks, and 20 to 25% in 8 to 12 weeks. And that's, again, more dramatic in highly trained individuals. When you get into that upper tier VO2 max values in terms of how well an athlete's trained, it's really hard to get those extra couple of milliliters per kilogram per minute, but then easier to lose it as well.
Yeah, so like with highly trained athletes, like, you know, you said it takes a lot longer, so I can like look for like for highly trained athletes to regain their cardio, it'll take quite a bit longer just because they probably lost a lot more of like their VO2 max compared to a like recreational mid-level cardio athlete. So that'll take more like 6 to 10 weeks. And then that also just, again, depends on how long they were detrained and whether like what did they do when they were not working out? Like, were they like completely sedentary, or were they just like, you know, like still going on walking, hikes or whatever?
Fair, yeah. And so like Clarence was saying, in terms of detrained athletes as well, losing some of that, but just in terms of general population, if you haven't been doing cardio recently, like myself, for example, who took a good hiatus from conditioning after I retired from my sport, it takes anywhere from, to be honest, 8 to 12 weeks of consistent cardiovascular training to build up your base again. And this stuff isn't unfortunately that exciting. It's, you know, zone 2 training for the most part. So lower intensity work, think below 130 beats per minute. It's not flashy, it's not exciting, but it's what you need to kind of lay that foundation for more intense training later that will really start to help you improve your VO2 max and your actual conditioning. Too many people make the mistake and they're just like, oh, like I'm gonna start running, and they just add all of this volume immediately. So maybe talk a little bit about that and how the body responds and why we don't necessarily recommend that.
Yeah, so like what you said, how like a lot of people like, oh, like for example, like for you when you took your long break, like I'm assuming you're doing a lot of like high intensity intervals or whatever, or like just high intensity training when you were like in like the depths of your boxing career, basically. Some people would be like, oh, I'm gonna hop right back into that. But you know, like that's not what we want to do. We want to like what Evelyn said, like building that aerobic base, doing your zone 2 training, really boring stuff. But that's really just to one, like we said a lot, building your aerobic base, but also making sure you don't get injured. Because one thing with like those high intensity, high effort, like zone 4 or 5 runs and intervals that you're going to be doing, that's a lot of strain on your like connective tissue. So you're like your ligaments, tendons, and like all that fun stuff. So then hopping right into that without first getting your body accustomed to even just doing any cardio again can lead to a lot of just like tendinopathies 100%. And like possibly even like sprains, because like your neuromuscular control or your proprioception of like your ankles or whatever is not the same, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you see this all the time, like I said, and it's not just athletes who are jumping back into it too. It's just general population clients. It's one of those things that let's be realistic. Running is an easy kind of low entry point for people to get into in terms of fitness, and lots of people do. I mean, there's hundreds of marathons, BMO, Vancouver Sun, all of this stuff that people want to be a part of, and that's great. But just think about how you're progressing volume. You don't want to be going from 0 minutes of running all the way up to nothing. So, for example, like we were just saying, I'm slowly building an aerobic base right now. I've designed myself a 12-week program, and it is literally a run and walk program. It is not exciting. It's things like you're running for 30 seconds, walking for 2 minutes, building up slowly. This week, I just did a run this morning. It was 1.5 minutes of walking. Or running, 2 minutes of walking for X number of rounds. So, and I'm doing that 3 times a week. So slowly building up capacity, where at the end of that 12 weeks, I'm running straight for 25 minutes. Now, again, like I said, this is me slowly building up capacity. And yes, people who are more highly trained, so I'm not necessarily concerned about injuring myself in terms of strength. I'm strong enough to be able to run, but a lot of people just don't have the foundation to be even strong enough to run. And that's another really big issue that we run into.
Yeah. Also, one thing, like even if you are strong enough to like do those like aerobic based like long low intensity runs, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be ready to do like those high intensity intervals, just because your muscles aren't used to producing that amount of force in that quick of a time
100%.
When you do that.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. But in terms of just like the fitness industry, I know a lot of research says that yes, like intensity is a really good way to increase your conditioning and your VO2. Yes, but with the caveat that you have to be prepared for it. So again, do you have an aerobic base? Are you strong enough
saying
to
aerobic
be able,
base a lot.
that is the word, honestly. Like I can't say it enough. But yeah, you've got to be strong enough in order to run for a long period of time. And most people, unfortunately, just don't know that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And in terms of like increasing your volume with like those like zone 2 training, typically a good guideline would be like increasing 10% of your like mileage per week.
Yeah. And again, obviously listen to your body, see how it responds. If you need to bring that back down, bring it back down a little bit, right?
Also, one thing I forgot to mention, for both cardio and for the like strength loss and muscle hypertrophy loss, spend a lot more time in your warm-ups when you're doing that, when you first come back, especially like your first 1 to 2 weeks, just like get your body fully accustomed to it.
100%. Sweet. Yeah. So that is kind of all about detraining. Like I said, a little bit of information here. Do we have any thoughts about next episode? We don't plan this very well yet. All right. Well, next episode will be a surprise.
TBD.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.